Showtime! The Capital G Show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here, doing another episode of the top 5 decks of the format, the Yu-Gi-Oh hierarchy. Once again with a twist. I got a lot of positive feedback from the video that I posted earlier this week, so I figure you guys might like another one on maybe just a little bit of a different topic. If you're like me, you absolutely cringe at the thought of having to spend $800 to anywhere upwards of $1,000 on a Yu-Gi-Oh deck, especially if you don't particularly enjoy the format that you have to play that deck in. For my money, I think that this is one of the worst formats that I've experienced, but that's a different topic for a different video. And I know a lot of people out there don't have, you know, mountains of disposable income, but still want to remain competitive, and that's why I've comprised this list. A lot of YouTubers have done similar things to this, but, you know, I watch their videos, and halfway in, I'm always thinking, half of these decks nobody ever plays. And I've always considered the standard of excellence and a really good accomplishment a top 8 at regionals. And I say that because, you know, if you're not in a state that hosts regionals at least twice a year, then you're probably bordering a state that does host regionals twice a year. Not all of us can fly in planes halfway across the country to YCSs, so regionals are a lot more accessible to everybody. So I really did try and pick 5 decks that are really competitive, that I feel like you can go to a regional tomorrow, get your top 8, you know, head held high, that you beat out probably 200 other players. Kicking things off at number 5, I've got Infernal. I'm leaning more towards the synchro version of the deck. I believe that potentially it could have the best lockdown field in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I played against the deck. I had somebody drop Void Ogre Dragon, Doom Dragon, 2 breaks, and 3 barriers on me. I don't care what you're playing. It's going to be practically impossible to get out of that situation. The deck is obviously very explosive. The synchro version is probably the more OTK capable of the two. And the synchro version has really good answers against some of the higher tier decks. I mean, you can make Void Ogre Dragon against Prophecy. You can make Crimson Blader against Dragon Ruler, respectfully. You can struggle against Evil Swarm. Obviously, Ophion is a complete hindrance to the synchro version of the deck, and the synchro version does have more consistency issues than the XC version, and especially in this format, that's a really bad thing to have, because, you know, you're not given a whole lot of time to set up as it is in this format. You know, overall, the main, the side deck, the extra, they're all relatively cheap, especially due to the Infernity Barrier reprint. Nothing in the deck really costs over $4. Number 4 is Gadgets. I feel like they're a really solid anti-meta pick right now, and you actually do have access to the turn 1 Shock Block, that being made possible thanks to Kage and Template Goldfish. You guys taught me that, so thank you very much. The deck has an incredibly solid grind game, and Redux has just worked wonders for the deck. Not only does it make your rank 7 XC plays a lot more consistent and easy, but, you know, you get a potential wall so that you don't have to burn through your traps as quickly, and you get some use out of those dead gadgets that are just sitting in your graveyard, the dead Maxis sitting in your graveyard. You can remove those guys, you can summon your Redux and continue your plays further. You also can run back row overload so that you have answers to pretty much anything that the top decks would throw at you, or even some of the rogue matchups. And this deck is, once again, relatively cheap. I mean, Redux is about a $7 card. Big Eye, unfortunately, is about $70, so that does eat up a lot of the budget, but the rest of the deck has been reprinted and is generally found in about common or rare forms, so it's going to be relatively cheap. Now, unfortunately, we can't have Dracosac in this deck, or that would pretty much eat up the entire $250 budget. So, you know, I still feel like without Dracosac, you can easily top 8 your way to a regional. My number 3 deck is Chainburn, and I know a lot of you guys are like, oh my god, Capital G, we know you play Chainburn, stop pushing your deck on us. Okay, I put Chainburn up here because I feel like amongst the high tier decks, especially the big 4, you really don't have a poor matchup. A lot of times I play rogue decks. I mean, it's easy 2-0 victories because your opponent just isn't prepared to face this. You know, cards like Royal Decree and Jinzo have become non-factors in this meta, and 2 of the historical worst matchups that Chainburn has ever had to deal with, Six Samurai and Dark World, basically have fallen off the end of the earth, so you don't have to worry about those. A lot of times you play your opponent, you're almost guaranteed to win game 1. However, guys, be advised, there is one huge problem card in this format for Chainburn. We all know what I'm talking about. Eradicator Virus is a huge problem for this deck. And if you don't see it game 1, you best believe you will see it game 2. So get your dark bribes ready because you're definitely gonna need them. You know, one of the best things about Chainburn is almost the entire deck is common. So outside of one card in the main side or extra, that being Card D, which is about $30 a pop, the rest of the deck literally is like $1 or less. My number 2 deck is a Hero Lives Heroes, and the deck is super explosive. It's incredibly easy to OTK with. It makes the turn 1 Shockmaster play like seamlessly. And unlike certain decks like Karakuri, where they just kind of fall apart to Ophion, this deck really doesn't struggle with Ophion as much as you might imagine. I say that because a lot of times you can pump out 2 rank 4 Xyzs in the same turn, so Ophion's going to get his ass run over by one of those cards. The deck is only benefited by the fact that nobody plays Gorz anymore. For the life of me, I don't understand why. I think the deck has speed and power to match some of the best decks in the format. Usually this is at the cost of the defense of the deck, but you know, you can't have your cake and eat it too. The best part is nothing in the entire deck outside of Cowboy is going to cost you over $10. Almost everything in its lowest rarity can be found at like $2 or less, and you know, it looks like people took my advice to go derp or go home, because at that regionals that Robbie topped, somebody also made a top 8 with Hero Lives Heroes. Number 1 should have been relatively obvious. It's Evil Swarm. It's easily one of the 3 best decks of the format. Because of its numbers and the success that it's had thus far, I could even make an argument that it is the best deck of the format. It's really refreshing to have one of the top decks of the format so cheap too. You know, you have good matchups against pretty much every high tier deck of the format. The one exception obviously is Prophecy, but this can be mitigated by just citing in the maximum amount of copies that you can get your hands on of the Eradicator Virus, which once again also cripples decks like Dark World and Chainburn at the same time. You know, the deck really doesn't have any inherent bad matchups, and it's really nice that, you know, it's a relatively cheap deck too, because outside of Ophion running you about $10, the infestation cards are only about $5 or less, and Kerykeion and Cowboy are pretty much the only pricey cards you're gonna have to run into, those obviously being about $20. But you know, for a deck of this caliber that can easily win a YCS, you know, I really think that it's a very nice combination of anti-meta plus, you know, cheap deck. So let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you enjoyed this top 5 list, and I'll talk to you later. Subscribing makes life happy.